Hello, it's Neil Romanek from AU, and welcome to another Feed Forum where we talk about the big issues around media technology and the broadcast business. It's NAB time again. So NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters show, which is a big trade show in Las Vegas, if you've been hiding under a rock and don't know it. One of the biggest and kind of longest running media tech trade shows in the world. I remember going to NAB when they literally had radio towers, that masts, big masts that you could go and look at, like you could buy a radio tower. And now, there's not that much there now. It's a lot of screens and digital stuff and people showing you stuff that maybe exists in the cloud, isn't even physical at all. So NAB has been trying to keep, and has done a very good job of keeping pace with changing technology and changing trends in the broadcast industry. We're going to talk to a couple vendors today. We're going to NAB, two of the many, many vendors that you can meet on the trade show floor there, and just kind of feel out what their plans are for the show and what is the place of trade shows today. I mean, what are we doing? Just flying in and talking to people? Shouldn't there be an app for this? Do we have to have real human beings talking to each other in real spaces still? Anyway.
My bot will call your bot.
Exactly. My agent, when they say my agent will call your agent, it means a whole different thing now.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got Simon Westland, who's director of EMEA at Blackmagic Design, and Derek Barrilleaux, who is the CEO of Projective. And hello, guys.
Nice to see you both.
Yeah.
So all right. So where are you in your NAB plans? Do you have your tickets? You're all ready to go. You've got your hotel booked. Do you know what shows you're going to see in Las Vegas?
Before we started, I mentioned just to you, Neil, I guess I'm on the lucky end of this because it's my colleagues in the US in our San Francisco office they get all of the fun in the last sort of couple of weeks beforehand. I mean, obviously, as Derek will know, there's a huge amount of preparation, and I think the preparation probably starts as soon as the previous NAB is over. I think you then start to plan for the following year. So yeah, on my side, it's I shouldn't perhaps say this, but it's been rather easy because my colleagues in the US are the ones that probably are currently in that final panic stage of, is everything packed? Has everybody got a hotel room? Has everybody got shirts? And all those typical trade show things.
On our side, we're lucky. We have a pretty easy trade show footprint. It's pretty easy to manage. We're a relatively small company. It's not like Blackmagic with 10,000 people on booth, but it's good to have that ready to go now, so we can just focus on trying to get the word out and getting those meetings set up and making the money worthwhile.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Blackmagic, as you mentioned, you've got that. I mean, you always have this huge stand with a lot of great gear on it, and everybody's always at that stand checking out the new stuff. And it's like, it must be like a traveling circus going to these shows. I mean, do you have it? Is it like down to a fine art, or how does that work?
I guess we do a lot of them, so we should be good at them by now when it comes to the sort of whole prep and sort of moving everything in and out. But yeah, it's a pretty big operation to bring shows of that size together. But equally, we're talking about, you remembering when there were radio towers at NAB. My first NAB with Blackmagic, we were in a 10 by 10. And in the bottom of Southall Lower, so it hasn't always been that giant booth in the front of in the front of the hall, but it has been for a number of years. So yeah, we're grateful of that, and it's I think that the show has just grown for us over the sort of 18 years I've done it with Blackmagic. I was there a couple of times prior to being with Blackmagic Design, so always in the same hall. So I think I'm on about 25 NABs this year. We missed a couple, of course, due to that pandemic thing. But I think, this is about probably number 25 personally for me.
And will you have a booth, Derek, when you're there, or are you gonna be doing the floors?
Yep. We're actually not far away from Blackmagic and Lucid Link if you guys are looking for us. So you can find us N3144. But yeah, so we had a couple of years in there where we would just kind of piggyback or just have a little pod on someone else's booth. But for the past, kind of since COVID, we decided, no, we're definitely going to have our own booth, and we want that presence. We want people to know where we are rather than having to find us. So. Yeah.
So I guess let's get into, it'll be great also to hear later on exactly what you're planning to show at the, at NAB at the show. But just to kind of pull back and look at these kind of trade shows generally, both of you mentioned COVID, and there was that thing in COVID where like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And we had to everybody had to reinvent their business over weekends, and trade shows as well. There was, I think it was, I don't know if it was Mobile World Congress or one of those kind of big shows was about to happen in Europe. And there was that like, oh, is it going to happen? Is it not? And it was like, no, it's not going to happen. And then we had that thing of waiting. Okay, is IBC going to happen? No. Is NAB going to? No. And then that kind of kept going and going, and people found, I don't know if they found workarounds, but that whole idea came up of like, okay, do you need to go to shows? And of course, there's the sustainability angle. It's like, do we really need to be flying everywhere all the time? And it'd be great to just kind of hear what and also kind of what the shows offer you guys specifically for your business. But how are you thinking about trade shows? Is it still, are you thinking about them really the same way you would have before COVID, or are there new approaches, or are they the purpose different than it was before?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think there is it's definitely a challenge I feel for the big show organizers to ensure that they stay relevant and they stay current and that they stay up to date with the needs of what we all know is quite a changing customer base. It isn't to your point, Neil, it's not the traditional sort of transmitter, people that buy sort of transmitters and masts and those kind of things. The market is very different to when we all started to do the show years ago. So I think there's a pressure for them to remain as important in the calendar. There needs to be, I think, from a attendee's point of view, a sort of fear of missing out. There's got to be reasons to attend, because if they're not, you again, make the point that these are expensive both as the companies themselves who are exhibiting at the shows, but it's also really quite expensive for the attendees to now travel out to Vegas. So I think, we probably see companies certainly in Europe, and Derek's in Munich today, and I'm in Manchester. We see a lot of the sort of European customers maybe not traveling out in as big a party size that they may have done a few years ago. So you might get one or two people from an organization come over from Europe rather than 8 or 10, which was probably more commonplace when we were doing these 15, 20 years ago. So, certainly I certainly think some pressures to stay relevant to the attendees.
I tend to agree with all of that, but and I think from our perspective, everyone has limited means, right? So unless if you're an AI company with billions and billions being thrown at you for doing nothing, we have to basically make the most usage of that of that marketing spend, right? If I had a better way to get the concentration of good leads and meetings and kind of business development and networking, that marketing bang for your buck, marketing ROI, I would take it, but I still haven't found anything that that approaches it. So I do think we have to, the organizers of NAB and IBC and Broadcast Asia, if they're listening, they have to pay attention and try and look at ways to to also kind of reduce costs and make it easier for the vendors and the people to participate and get more value. Because the market is definitely changing. You may not need to have 3 or 4 or 5 trade shows a year. Maybe the smaller boutique ones might just be easier to execute on and run and save a lot of money. But like I said, for us today, there's still, the NAB is the lighthouse marketing spend for us in North America. IBC is the marketing lighthouse spend for us in Europe, and it's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, I think the major perhaps difference to when we started them was that, you know, customers don't have to now wait for 12 months to come and see a product. It's not like you've got that annual pilgrimage to NAB or to IBC. There's much greater access to product information, whether that's demonstrations or, to get in touch with a reseller partner or other representatives. So there's many more, sort of touch points, access points than there used to be, I think, when the show started. I mean, I think NAB is something like 35 years old, IBC's 50 years old. The industries that how they were then to how they are now are completely different. And I think the way customers buy is also very different. So, the shows have really, I think, got to look at things like, got to recognize that, maybe providing more learning opportunities for customers, networking opportunities, those opportunities, I think, also to see startup businesses, because we were all startup businesses at some point in time, and that's where the trade shows were so relevant and so important. And Grant, who's my boss, sort of often comments that, the real gold at trade shows is often down the back of the hall. It's buried away in the back corner in a sort of startup business that's got some, crazy idea that they want to bring to market, and something really exciting. So I think, all of those things, more networking opportunities, more opportunities for startups, they're the things I think the shows have really got to focus upon.
That is interesting because you're talking about, that changing, the changing attendance. There's kind of a new waves of people coming in as the industry changes. And I noticed that it seemed like looking at the content program from this year's NAB, and it's kind of been doing it for a while, but there seemed a lot of emphasis on um, programming, the conference sessions, activities for creators. For that creator economy, which has always kind of been there, but I noticed how much more that seemed front and center, and I wonder maybe if those are kind of people are coming to the show, or how. And I, of course, obviously, Blackmagic. I know that's one of the many audiences that or customer bases that you serve are those creators. And I wonder how you're approaching that in terms of the changes in the business. So it isn't those big. I mean, those big broadcasters are there, but that's maybe not what the total spend is going to be. And also, those big broadcasters are going to be, they kind of know the vendors that they're going to see. But the bulk of creators, whether it's small creators or businesses or corporate, it's much wider now than it ever was.
Well, I guess the expression these days is that, anyone can be a broadcaster. From the point of view of, it's not a case now of having to, win a license, build big studios and have all of that infrastructure. Obviously, you can make content and post that to YouTube and other channels really quickly, and you can attract audiences that are actually much larger than terrestrial TV. I sort of top viewed programs in the UK TV market probably attract 3-4 million viewers in the evening. Well, you look at some of the numbers of views that the content creators are achieving, and that's staggering. And also, what comes with that is their desire to improve the quality of their output. Turn things around quicker. Better workflows, more efficient, faster turnaround of content. So I think, look, we see, certainly from our perspective, because we sell everything from a $50 mini converter to a $50,000 full 5-bay audio console for our Fairlight audio digital audio consoles. So we're kind of seeing everybody from, yes, the broadcasters clearly, who are a big part of the business and our business, through to individuals that maybe come and use DaVinci Resolve or want to buy one of our pocket cameras, all those kind of things. So, yeah, I think that content creator economy is quite exciting, because it's bringing more people and more creativity into the market, and they're probably a bit less scared than some of the broadcast community, where new technology can be frightening, when they've got to sort of chuck out this old infrastructure and put something new in. We perhaps have less hesitation. I don't know what you find, Derek, but
Totally.
the newer breeds are sort of bringing newer demands, but also new energy into the space.
There's less tech debt, right? So a lot of the creators are, they're producing so much freaking content that they get to the same point of having friction in the way they work, that they really quickly see the need to adopt technologies like ours, from the people on this webinar. But also, they have less tech debts. They're not saddled with people who, this is just the way I've been doing things for the last 15 years. I'm not going to change. It's a lot more, desperate, I would say, like the necessity is a mother invention, and they're a lot more ready to kind of pull the trigger and change. And I think, looking at our personal customer base, yes, we have the biggest broadcasters in the world, and we love working with them. We also have super agile creative agencies and these kind of smaller corporate video, these kind of creators. And if you look at the volume that they're producing, and by the way, Simon, you hit on a great point. It's not just video, right? It's also audio, it's also graphics, stills. And, I think the creators are a lot more used to kind of looking at that broader creative stack than I think a lot of the big broadcasters are, where they say, I need a solution to get the video on the news at 8 o'clock, right? I think I think the creative economy has to be by nature transmedial, right? And so we welcome that, because it's right where our product fits, obviously. But so I'm biased, but I think I think that's the way. I think that's where the market in general is going. The broadcasters that we're working with are also starting to think not just about Media Composer or Premiere or even Resolve. They're thinking about the entire stack.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking at maybe turning to some more painful topics, there's a few economic shocks kind of on the way. It seems like we're in the middle of some stuff. Are you taking that into account when you're going over to the US as well? There's also there's a war going on right now, which the US is engaged in. Some people are rethinking their relationships internationally with how they do business and politically, and that's kind of we're kind of forced into a position of not. You can't just say, well, we'll just keep doing what we've been doing for the past 20 years. I'm sure it'll be fine. There's at least some reflection that needs to happen. So are you going into any trade shows, kind of rethinking how those relationships work, and kind of rethinking how those especially international relationships have worked in the past, and the different kind of markets, and how maybe they're splitting up and doing different kinds of things?
From our perspective, I can jump in, Simon. We're viewing NAB as an exclusively United States of America based show this year. We're not anticipating in the past, we anticipated a lot of kind of Latin American, Canadian, European customers, and we can meet all of them in one place. That was a big advantage of us, of that, the NAB show in particular. Last year we saw a dramatic decline, that most people that were at the show were kind of American or North American. We're talking to our existing customers and prospects, and basically it's going to be most of the people in the United States who are going to be there. there'll be some exceptions, of course. We're one of them, but yeah. So we're definitely seeing that the show's going to be for that specific market. And, for the organizers of NAB, that I think will present a challenge because, if it, I think IBC is going to profit from it, right? Because I think a lot of people are going to go there instead, or MPTS in the UK, that they'll definitely
Mm,
profit from as well. Uh,
mm. I
so
think it's a good
yeah,
point. I think I think that it could be to an advantage of some of the sort of in-country shows, the likes of MPTS in the UK and shows like Satis in Paris. And I think we tend to find that's what's happening is that people know that they're going to get to see most of the same brands and manufacturers at those shows. So therefore, it's a lot easier for them to, and a lot cheaper to actually attend one of the more local shows than the international ones. And I think it's an interesting point that Derek makes. I think that that could certainly, I think, will have an impact on those international events because the international movement of people and the cost of doing so is harder and is more expensive. And I think, we're likely, I think we can probably expect that to have some impact on numbers this year, I would think, and moving forward. I think certainly moving forward. I mean, the one thing, it's been hard for them clearly over the last 6 years. I mean, we went into the this new decade and hit a pandemic which pretty much wiped out 2 years worth of shows. The points you make are all relevant. There's huge challenges across the globe at the moment in terms of conflict and in terms of economic crisis and these factors. So I think it's been tough for the trade show industry during this period of time. One thing I would say from a customer point of view, and again, I'm sure Derek's found this, is that, our customers are creative. So they find other ways of working. They'll find, they'll take, what we saw in the pandemic was incredible in terms of, home studios, people, remote productions. And I think that, you know, the customers in terms of both the creative in terms of their output were creative in terms of the way they changed their businesses to be able to work. And a lot of those things, I'm not sure what your thought on that, Derek, it's possibly accelerated certain things like cloud, because cloud was almost it became a must-have during the times of the pandemic because it was easier to sort of share and move media and all of those things. Some of the things that we probably adopted and were accelerated by the pandemic have now stayed very much at the forefront of sort of modern workflows for people. So, there is a load of challenges, but I think, it's our customers are pretty creative in terms of the way they work around those. And I think it's our job, collectively as an industry, to respond to those challenges and keep pace with what the customers need today rather than what they needed 5 or 10 years ago.
yes. So I think I like that notion of the creatives being creative, right, by necessity. Like it's just a part of the nature of the beast. I think I mentioned before that, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So what we're seeing, you talk about the global challenges. Well, one of them is that it's very difficult to get your hands on hardware right now, right? So, that is pushing people to cloud resources. At the same time, the cost model of the cloud resources is pushing people back to on-premise in certain cases. So there's this kind of push-pull between the two. Um, and so I think in that kind of climate, flexibility becomes hugely important. It's almost a cliche to say so, but I think, and if I could, raise my flag for a moment, one of the things that we provide with that kind of project framework that can be in the cloud, it can be on premise, it can be both, it could be for all of your creative content, I think that provides a flexibility that helps people kind of navigate. Now, those people still have to have dry powder or free cash to be able to make an investment, right? But if we have that, we can show them then how, the ROI calculations that we can provide when we're trying to get the purchase order out of them, that it does translate into genuine value. And I think those kind of macroeconomic changes can actually highlight some of those processes.
The So there's something about that kind of, rather than having these interlocking pieces that are like, okay, you're set. We'll see you in 7 years or whatever, that you have these sort of pieces that can, you want to be able to take them apart and put them together in different combinations really fast, which of course, I guess is what we saw in the pandemic. It's like, don't come into work Monday. We're doing something different. I'll let you know what that is on Tuesday, And you mentioned cloud, or I heard cloud mentioned. So, and that of course seems like that's a bit of a double-edged sword too, because cloud, although we know a lot of cloud companies are eating up green energy, still there's fossil fuels fueling a lot of those, which means potentially that your cloud bills are going to get bigger if the
It's
price
coming.
of fuel.
It's
So
coming.
it's a really interesting, as you're saying, and then so you do things on-prem, and this kind of interesting juggling act. But what are you seeing the place of cloud now, and how it kind of affects your businesses? And AI, I guess we can kind of dump in that too, because that it's a cloud service essentially. And how that may go over the next, I mean, we don't know for sure, but over the next 6 months, year, or how that may pan out, and how people might need to prepare or rethink things.
So we see this push-pull, right? So, there was this, like you said, Neil, in the pandemic, there was this huge push, get everything in the cloud so we can work from anywhere. And then the OpEx cost model kind of did this curve, and everyone got afraid of the long tail of some of those investments. And now it's like, hang on a second. We've seen some of our cloud customers trying to repatriate and move what doesn't need to be in the cloud back on premise. We see other customers who can't get their hands on premise hardware pushing to the cloud, because at least they can get, they can do something, right? So that there's definitely that push pull in play. I think at the end of the day, it's always going to be an application that's driving it, right? So you're trying to solve a problem for a particular application, for a particular use case. So, and I know I'm painting with a very broad brush, but cloud is an enabler to do particular things, and that's all driven by the application underneath it. So everything else is just a basically dollar cost averaging, how much you can get the most bang for your buck on the price per terabyte.
Mm. I think it's what is interesting is, though, that now I think cloud is regarded as being an essential part of modern workflows. It's no longer a sort of optional, or do we, don't we? In some shape or form, it exists within most people's workflows. And we've seen a lot over the last a couple of years, obviously, with things like our camera to cloud. So Blackmagic Cloud, you can upload directly proxy files or camera originals straight into Blackmagic Cloud. You can use your DaVinci Resolve project in the cloud, and you can share media in the cloud, and from one cloud store to another cloud store. It's all modern stuff. And what we're seeing is actually, there's no real fear now, I don't think, with the customer base, like there may have been 4, 5, 6 years ago. People were a little bit more tentative as to what that meant. People are now seeing that the advantages are so dramatic in terms of the speed of moving media and being able to work collaboratively. One of the things we talk about with DaVinci Resolve is that it's very common for an editor to be in London, but the colorist to be in LA. Well, that's no longer a technical challenge in any shape or form. It's now really easy to make that happen. In the same way, we were involved in we had a customer who shot a feature film out in Romania 2 or 3 months ago, and the production company were back in London. Well, in terms of being able to see those dailies and to be able to see that material on set, they were literally uploading proxies straight from camera up into cloud, and they're being watched back in the production office in London whilst they've still got the talent on set. Now, previously that used to be a next day thing, and you'd have to reset it and everything else. They were literally being able to go through approvals within a matter of minutes. I mean, I think that really is, I think, where cloud has genuinely sort of revolutionized people's methods of working. You know, they're now able to do things that they just couldn't do previously.
It kind of pile onto that, Simon, because I think you, and like a lot of the times people are asking the question, like, what's our cloud strategy or what's our AI strategy? As if it's this like separate thing. Right. I feel like that's a fallacy, right?
Yes, totally agree.
It's not about like, it's not about implementing cloud somehow or implementing AI somehow. It's about getting your content turned around faster, saving money, getting, and
100%.
so, and that's part of what what we're trying to show is that, it can be easy to use little individual point solutions that are in the cloud or individual point AI tools that are out here and next to where you're working. It's a little bit harder to take the framework of how you're working and then kind of break it apart to figure out what bits you can put in the cloud and what bits AI can do with it, right? And our approach to the whole thing, be it cloud, be it AI, is to try and say, no, let's focus on getting that foundation in place, being sensible, whether it's Resolve or whether it's Adobe or whether it's Premiere or Media Composer or whether it's Pro Tools and whether it's cloud or on-premise. And basically, let's get that framework in place. And now we can say, right, well, this should be cloud because this is the way that work
Absolutely.
is being done. Or these
Absolutely.
review and approval makes sense to be in the cloud, but the editing process needs to be in on-premise, or the archive needs to be on-premise for cost reasons. Or there's just break up the problem into different parts of how you work and pick the best of breed technology that fits.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And I think that, it works when it's seamless. It works when actually, and it's one of the things that people sort of say with Resolve. I mean, you open up or you start a new Resolve project and it's kind of giving you three options. Is it local? Is it on a local network, or is it in cloud? And if you want to, you can move it between any of those three at any given time. So, it's not that, I don't think it's about forcing customers down one particular pathway. It's actually making the whole thing as seamless as you can, because that's where the true sort of freedom comes from of what, cloud can offer.
And that adaptability that you're talking about, of being able to just really turn on a dime if you have to. Yeah. So I guess getting to the show itself, what are you guys showing at the show? What's your big message for the show? And I know that Blackmagic will have a lot of stuff, probably a few different things. And Projective, do you have, and start with you, Derek, maybe what is your goal for the show, and what stuff are you really want people to get in front of people?
He's asking for the trade secrets a week out before the show.
So I was going to say, I'm glad I'm going first, because if Simon's going to do each of the different product lines of Blackmagic, like I'm going to be here for a month. I can turn off after I'm finished. No, so basically, I already kind of alluded to it, right? So we kind of create this project foundation that could be cloud or on-premise, right? And what we're basically showing is our first attempts to bring AI, I hate using those two letters, but bringing media intelligence functionality into that framework so that we can do things like, semantic search or emotional search of our kind of complete kind of data set that we're managing. Or we can do, automatic transcriptions of, audio tracks that are coming in. So it all becomes searchable metadata. And I know there's at the application layer that some of this isn't new, because I know you guys are doing stuff like that. I know the guys at Adobe are doing stuff like that at the application layer. But what we're trying to show is how, if you do it at our kind of production asset management layer, you have a systematic win from that, in that rather than having this editor or these 5 of your 50 editors repeating the same task of transcribing something, you can do it in a systematic way on ingest or or during your edit process, and you can really offload those tasks. But then also the output of it, it's usable, it's searchable, and B, because we're managing how that content comes in, all of it is captured, right? I always like to say, a lot of people are talking about AI these days, again, thinking about it as this thing that's out there. I need an AI solution, right? But if you're pointing AI at chaos, you will get zero benefit from it, right? If you get the foundation in place, then you will start to see benefits of it. So when basically that's what we're showing is our first attempt to bring those kind of media intelligence features into our product set, so we can drive those concrete, real values, and not the kind of esoteric like, AI, right?
Now with AI,
Exactly. Now with one of those. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think we'll have a few things.
So will there be some new some revelations we don't know, product releases that will surprise us?
NAB is generally, in terms of our calendar, the show where we would make most of our new product announcements. So yes, I think we'll see some things. I think what we'll see is a lot of that building on the recent years of what we've been doing. I think, obviously DaVinci Resolve is now extremely successful, having come from a color correction tool and now transforming into a sort of complete post solution for editing and audio post-production and VFX work, all under sort of one umbrella. So Resolve certainly will be high profile again, I think, at NAB this year. I think we're going to see quite a lot in the area of infrastructure wise of things like 2110. IP video, I think that's kind of caught fire over the last 12, 18 months. I think, if you're not putting if you're not connecting in cloud, you're now connecting with IP and with 2110 infrastructure. So I think one of the things that we hope that we're able to do as a business is make some of those technologies, democratize them to make them affordable, easy to use, and to integrate within existing SDI workflows, so that, again, people are not being asked to make a decision to throw everything out that they already have, but how do they get the two things working together? How do they work in an SDI-based infrastructure, which certainly our broadcast clients do, and most of our clients do, but how do they then get the advantages and the benefits that 2110 and IP video will bring, but be able to get the two things to coexist without recruiting an army of IT engineers is the sort of big challenge of that. So I think we're going to see quite a lot around those product areas. We have a really strong digital film camera lineup that's evolved over the last couple of years with our new RGB W sensor technology, which is kind of challenging the traditional way of Bayer sensors and to create greater color fidelity. And obviously for us, cameras go hand in hand with Resolve. So there's a relationship there. So yeah, look, I think there'll be one or two things. So no sort of, I'm not divulging any product names and details in that answer. But yeah, expect there to be a few exciting things on the booth.
Amazing. So I guess what is it that you really hope to come away with from the show? I mean, what is it like, Derek, if there's one thing you could come away with, what is that? What's your goal for the show? What's your wish list?
As a good sales guy, we're looking for leads, and we're looking to, to have good meetings to move our existing pipeline forward, right? We always joke around about we're a very well kept secret, and I'm looking to change that, right? So if you guys have any tips for me, I'm all ears. Yeah, so it's really about the same as it is every year, of kind of getting the word out and getting new pipeline created, and then getting also kind of our customers, those opportunities moving forward, so we can fund the next NAB in 2027.
And do you have a pretty booked calendar, or you have your days filled up with appointments, or?
So I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm starting, but my team members have started to fill up my calendar. So we'll get there. But I'm not, like I said, it's a little bit embarrassing, but this is actually early for me. I'm so freaking last minute.
Yeah. You're preacher to the choir there. What about you? What does Blackmagic want to come away with?
Yeah, I think one of the great things, and Derek alluded to this in one of the first answers given this afternoon about, that intensity of being able to see so many people over a short period of time. One of the things that we absolutely love about trade shows, and it's one of the main reasons we do them, is that actually we come away from NAB with another 20 product ideas. It's those conversations that take place on the booth. It's that opportunity, and we are fortunate. We'll see many thousands of people across our booth across the 4 days. But we get to have some incredible conversations. We get to learn, it's one thing for us to talk about customer challenges and how they work in and their workflows. What we really need to do is have the customers tell us. And I think that, it's one of the things that we really do sort of stress as being of huge importance to us at NAB and other shows, but is that opportunity to have those conversations. It's the learning that we do. I mean, again, Grant, my boss, sort of comes away at the end of day one and goes, oh, maybe we should build one of these. I think we need one of those. We haven't done this yet. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. We've another 3 days of this trade show to go. But by the end of night one, there's kind of another, 6 or 10 product ideas that have stemmed from conversations that we're able to have with people. So I think genuinely, we get our best product ideas from trade shows and from NAB. I'm a bit opposite to Derek in switches. And this is something I made a conscious effort a number of years ago to change about my trade show attendance. I don't book appointments in my diary now for NAB. And I don't do it on purpose, because if I do, I'm going to meet with all the people that I already know. So the fact we might have, several hundred dealers there that are coming in, and it's kind of, oh, can we sit down? Can we talk? Well, of course we can do that. And we're going to do that. But the point is we're there to meet people we don't know, not the ones that we do. So I'm actually, and so loads of people find it a bit frustrating when they say, oh, Sam, can we put this in your diary? Can we have it? And I'm like, yeah, come to the booth. Come to the booth, come and find me, and we'll sit down and we'll talk, and which we will. And as Derek knows well, we'll all be talking for 10 hours a day, which is, if we have any voice left by day 3, we've done pretty well. But genuinely, I now look. There's the odd thing that has to go into the diary, but as a rule, I will try and go to the show with an empty diary. And to Derek's point, other people might fill it up for me, but I try and, at least from my point of view, not make a whole load of appointments before going.
I'm exactly the opposite. I'm exactly the opposite. It's so funny. I start late, but I fill up my calendar packed full, and then I end up juggling 2 gigs at the same time. But that's okay, because we figured it out. But
I used to. I've been there and done that before, and in previous businesses, sort of gone there with a diary of going, oh my God, when's lunch coming in? When's lunch coming into this schedule? So I've done both, and I think that, and as I say, look, there'll be a whole host of meetings, but I really kind of fight against sort of going with a whole list of appointments, because genuinely what happens then, and I do love this about how we will approach the trade shows. It means we put all the people on the front of the booth. So when you come to the front of the booth and you come to Blackmagic's booth, you're not talking to, a huge sales team of individuals. You're talking to our product managers, you're talking to our tech support guys, you're talking to product specialists and different members of the team. So, we really want, and again, if we're true to the statements I made about learning from customers and having those conversations, these are the people that need to be talking to the customers, not buried at the back of the booth in meetings for 4 days. The more conversations we can have, for us, that makes it a better show.
I was just going to say, as a journalist, I found that you're so busy covering the show that you don't actually get to cover the show. That you're just wall to wall doing what you should be doing, that you actually miss what's going on. So I'm really interested in that, how you're saying you get those ideas from the customer. That's what you get. You kind of keep your ears open and you get ideas from people. Do you have any like ways of like methods, having done this for years and years, of like how that data is collected and how things are acted on, or does Grant just say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do?
Sure. I mean, no fancy methods of data collection. We're all pretty disciplined in making sure we go old fashioned. We've got a little notebook in the back of our pocket. We'll make a note. We'll literally take the details. Yes, we scan leads on the booth, and as most companies will. But what we tend to do, we're quite often, to be honest, Neil, if there's a conversation that's taking place and it needs to have one of our engineers brought into it or one of our other product specialists, we kind of try to make that happen there and then, where we can, where we'll say to the customer, "Oh, give me 2 minutes and let me find who I need to find," and we'll try and make it happen there rather than that then go away and never get acted on or never get discussed. It might be a case of going, "Look, could you swing by tomorrow?" And we'll have a chat then. But we try and make as much of that happen on the booth because we've got a big part of our team there, and normally the customer might have 1 or 2 colleagues with them. So we find that actually at least starting that conversation in person whilst we're together at the trade show is normally the initial trigger to then continuing that on. So, sorry, I've nothing fancier as an idea for data collection and how we make it happen. But we just try and have most of the conversations on the spot where we can.
I mean, that's just that, rather than I'll send you an email, is seems worth its weight in gold.
That is genuinely one of the issues, right? Like, so, you have these great conversations at the show and you feel like, that's a definite project. And I can, every show, there's like probably 10 of them where you feel like we can really help this customer do something. And then, we have this great conversation and then we reach out to the show so I think one of the things that's a challenge, I think one of the things we want to get better at is kind of turning that momentum of the great conversation at the show into the next step at the show, right? So that, because we're all having these conversations, and people we're talking to have probably had 100 great conversations like I had, and then it's kind of hard to keep the front of mind after the show. So I think it's important for us to try and figure out a way to kind of keep that momentum going.
I think we're kind of coming up to the end here, but do you have any extra Vegas things planned for when you're there, or is it just do the show, get back on the plane as soon as you're done?
Sleep every night by 10 p.m. is the golden rule. Some things you learn after doing 25 of these things is that always say no to that extra drink in the bar at the end of the evening, and it's the best decision you'll make for the following day. So that makes me sound really boring, but I think that on the basis that each day starts around 6 a.m. and we tend to get to the halls maybe an hour or so before the show starts, because I think that's just better than sort of coming in when the customers are arriving. But genuinely, I think the best feeling is for bedtime to start with a 10 or 11, and you definitely feel better for it the following morning. So it won't be all boring. I'm sure I'm sure we'll have a couple of nice dinners and catch up with some folks. But yeah, golden rule is bed by 10 or 11 p.m. these days.
I can tell you with 1,000% certainty that will not happen for me. But
and that's where I see Derek in a bar and he taps me on the shoulder in 10 days' time and goes, "You said you went to bed at 10 o'clock." And,
yeah, you gotta have goals, right? Gotta have goals.
Yeah. At least so how off course you've gotten, if you've got that. So
exactly.
Amazing, guys. I hope you have a dynamite show. I'm sure you will. And look forward to hearing how it goes and seeing some of the new product releases, and hope we can talk again soon. Thanks.